Let's take a look at a few more examples that deal with volume. Number 4, your soccer ball holds approximately 360 cubic inches of air. So this is telling me cubic inches means volume, that the volume of the ball is 360 cubic inches. What is the approximate radius of the soccer ball? So we know the ball is a sphere, so we can go back to our formula sheet, like what we picked from here, and use the volume of a sphere. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Let's write that down. Volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Now this time we're not looking for the volume, we're given the volume. Volume equals 360. So in place of the volume, we're going to put 360. So let's rewrite this equation. 360 equals 4/3 pi radius cubed. We're trying to solve for the radius. Find the radius of the soccer ball. We want to get r by itself. We want to get r to have nothing else around it. So let's start working from the farthest things out from r, like the 4/3. How do we get rid of 4/3? Well, when it's a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal. So we can say times 3/4 times 3/4. That gets rid of it from this side. And on this side, we're left with 270. 270 equals pi radius cubed. How do we get rid of the pi? Divide by it, because it's multiplying. Now, if I type 270 divided by pi, I'm going to get a decimal. So for now, I'm going to leave it 270 divided by pi equals radius cubed. How do we get rid of the cubed? What's the opposite of cubing? Cubed root. Go find the cubed root button on your calculator, math 4, and then type 270 divided by pi. So the radius is approximately 4.4 inches. Radius is just a length, so we get rid of the cubic inches and we just have inches. Number 5, two similar cylinders have heights in the ratio of 2 to 5. The smaller cylinder has a radius of 6 centimeters and a height of 8 centimeters. What is the volume of the larger cylinder? So we need to find volume of a cylinder. Let's go back to our formula sheet. Here's volume of a cylinder. Volume equals pi r squared h. So coming back to this problem, we're going to write down volume equals pi r squared h. Now what they gave me is the smaller cylinder's dimensions. The smaller cylinder has a radius that is 6 and a height that is 8. It wouldn't hurt to find that volume first. So the smaller volume is pi 6 squared, height is 8. Now again, because this is not our final answer, we're not going to type in the pi. We're just going to say 6 squared times 8, 288 pi. We don't want a decimal until the very end. Even then, sometimes we don't always write the answer as a decimal. Now we see similar. And anytime I see similar, I want to think of the comparisons between area, volume, and everything else. Remember our EEAV chart? So everything else means it's not called area and it's not called volume. Height goes in the everything else column. So the height ratio is 2 to 5. Once I know the everything else ratio, I can get to the other ratios by doing the appropriate task. Squaring it if it's area, or cubing it if it's volume. So if I need to use the area, 2 squared is 4, 5 squared is 25. If I need to use volume, 2 cubed is 8, 5 cubed is 125. Now, they gave us information to find the volume of the smaller. The smaller has a volume that's 288 pi. So over here in the volume, I put the 288 pi where the smaller number is, on top. What is the volume of the larger cylinder? I don't know that. So let's call it x and put it in the bottom. Now I have a proportion. How do we solve proportions? Cross multiply. 8 times x makes 8x. 125 times 288 makes 36,000. And of course, I have the pi. I'm not going to type it in till the very end. Then I have to get rid of the 8, so divide both sides by 8. 36,000 divided by 8 makes 4,500, and then I have the pi. So I could write my answer as 4,500 pi, and seeing that the units are centimeters, centimeters cubed, or I could say, type it in the calculator, and that's also a valid answer, approximately 14,137.2 centimeters cubed. Both answers are valid. I agree. It's nice to have options. Let's look at part B of this question. If the height of the smaller cylinder increases by a factor of 4, by what factor does its volume increase? So let's think about the fact that we're using a cylinder. The formula for the volume of the cylinder, pi r squared h. There we go right there. V equals pi radius squared times height. So let's think about what we're changing. The height of the cylinder increases by a factor of 4. Factor means multiply. Factors are things that are multiplied. So if the height increases by a factor of 4, that means instead of just h, we can put in that spot 4h. So how does that change our formula? The volume is pi radius squared times 4h. If I want to rearrange that, so I get back to my volume equals pi radius squared h, I'm just going to use my associative property and move the 4 over so it looks like this. Pi radius squared height and then times 4. So remember that the volume equals pi radius squared times height. So this part is the volume. So that means I've taken the volume and multiplied by 4. So what factor does the volume increase? By a factor that is 4. 4 times the volume. Let's look at another one so that you can see the difference between when we're changing the height versus when we're changing other dimensions. If the radius of the cylinder increases by a factor of 4, by what factor does its volume increase? So again, volume is pi radius squared times height. So if we take volume as pi radius squared times height, and instead of the radius, we increase it by a factor of 4. So we take out the radius and we put 4 radii. Multiply the radius by 4. How does that change what our formula looks like? Pi 4r, that's the radius, that gets squared, times height. Let's simplify that a little bit, meaning remove the parentheses. So that's pi, 4 squared makes 16, r squared makes r squared, and I still have height. Using the associative property, we rearrange these. Pi radius squared height times 16, put it at the end. Well, remember, volume is pi radius squared height. So all of this is the volume, which means we have volume multiplied by 16. So what is the factor that the volume increases by? 16. Thanks for watching.